Morning, everybody. Welcome to Down End Farm Studio. My name is Ali Board, Alison C. Board, and this is Technique Tuesday. What is Technique Tuesday? Technique Tuesday is where we all come together. At the moment, it's live on Facebook, but you might be watching via my YouTube channel or via my blog. However you're watching this morning, thank you very much for taking the time to tune in. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but it's bright and sunny in Dorset. So if you have forfeited going out in the sunshine for tuning into my broadcast today, then I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. Now, I do like to make a point before we get started this morning, and before I take you through loads of information that I have for you today. I like to say hello to those people who are popping up on Facebook, because it's nice to say hello, and it makes me feel like I'm not sitting here alone talking to myself, if I'm honest. So who have we got in the room? Rosemary, you win the prize for the first comment of the day. Congratulations. Janet, Ruth, Andrea, Maureen, Julie, Kareen, Kathy, Pam, Andrea. Oh, Andrea, is it dull in Derbyshire? That's rubbish. Come down to Dorset. It'll all be fine. Lynn, Joy, Joe, Jilly, all the J's, Maggie, Rabina has just popped up, Jean, Rosie says it's sunny in France. That's good to know, Rosie. I'm glad the sun is shining for you. Anne, Ali D is in the room, and she is currently on holiday. I'm glad you're having good weather. Everyone's popping up thick and fast. Janice, Marilyn, Linda P's in the room. Private joke. Jane, Steph, Jill, Mary, Wynne, good morning. Chris, who's saying she managed to get back from the opticians. Pam, Ulrika, Martina over there in Ireland, Judith, Dee, good morning, Rona, Lynn, Joe. If I have missed giving you a shout out, I do apologise. The little comments come up a bit thick and fast. I try to see them as they pop up. Morning, Brenda. But please don't think that I'm ignoring you. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to tune in. Now, what have we got to talk about this morning? The lovely morning Anita, morning Sylvia, good morning Patricia, good morning Pen, everyone's popping up. Now, the lovely Thyra, I'm never sure whether I'm pronouncing your name, Thyra, so if I am mispronouncing it, I do apologise, who is over there in Sweden. She asked a question during last week's Technique Tuesday that I thought it might be interesting to address today. So I'm gonna, she might not be able to tune in this morning, but if you are there, Thyra, good morning. You might be watching this on catch up. She was asking about my watercolour box and why I use watercolours in the way that I do. So I thought it might be helpful. Some of you will already know this if you followed a lot of my demonstrations or read my book. You will know some of this information already, but I thought I would take you through it to show you why I use the paints in the way that I do, how I catalogue them. I want to take you through my box of tricks as well and give you a little bit of an insight into why I do what I do. Now, this isn't just because I can, it's because 20 odd years plus, probably more like 25 years now, of working with watercolours has taught me that I like to use them in a particular way. Now, this isn't going to be the same for you, okay? But this is just how I like to work. You could test the theory out, try it out for yourself, but it would be interesting anyway to get your views on it. Now, before I do that, still some more hellos to say. Mick is in the room. Roger, good morning. Jan, Leanne, Karen, Trudy, Joe. Thyra is there, or Tyra, or tell me how to pronounce it. Tyra, this broadcast is for you because you asked a very, very good question last week about my paints. So thank you very much. Yes, I know auto captions, they don't like some of the more unusual names, and they don't like my Dorset accent either. So yes, some of them are really, really funny, Pam. Morning, Lynn. Now, I have lots of information to give you about events that are coming up, so please stick around right to the end of the broadcast because there's information about some free demonstrations coming up, lots and lots of places where you can interact, lots of information about my classes. So stick all the way through the broadcast, if you don't mind, till the end, and I'll give you that information then. Morning, Rosemary. Good morning, lovely Rachel. Barbara. So I'm going to take you to overhead camera and I'll show you a few things before we get into my box and why I do what we do. What I do even. So here is the way that you would ordinarily purchase watercolour paints. So this little box here, which is a very old box, this is my mum's box of watercolour paints. She might be in the room as well, lurking there somewhere. This is what's called a pan of watercolour. So watercolour paints are produced in exactly the same way. Morning Teresa, morning Pippa, up to a point. So the paint is made, it's ground, and then the paint manufacturers split it into two different ways. Some pour it into pans and allow it to dry. Some companies bake it into a little cake, which looks a bit like this. I'm pretty sure that's alizarin crimson. And then it goes into a pan and then into a box like that. These are fantastic if you like to go out and paint on location, very portable. This size is called a half pan. So the ones that are sort of almost square, they're called a half pan. You can get sets like this in whole pans as well. That is the size of a whole pan. So you can kind of see the difference. Now, it's not that I don't use pans of colour. I do use pans of colour when I pop out on location. It is simply that I struggle with these a little bit because I can never quite get the consistency of paint that I like. I find myself scrubbing away far too hard. Let me grab my brush and I can show you what I mean. I find myself scrubbing away at this colour, trying to get enough colour off on my brush in order to paint. So I get a little bit frustrated with this setup. But like I said, this is genuinely only my opinion. If it works for you, don't change, stick to it. I'm merely taking you through the process of how I got to the decision that I do. So that is a box of pans. Now, of course, you might be more familiar with this presentation of watercolour paints that come in tubes. Now, these are the Daniel Smith ones. I kind of shoved my hand into my box of paints this morning so I could pull some samples out for you. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I don't like colour straight out of the tube. I find the consistency when it comes out of the tube, and it doesn't seem to matter, although you get different consistencies for different manufacturers. I find the consistency when it comes straight out of the tube to be a little bit sticky. And it kind of sticks to the bristles of my brush, and then I can't lay it down on the surface in kind of an even way. So I get a bit frustrated with that. I end up spending much too much time trying to sort out the consistency of paint on my palette rather than getting on with the process of painting. Now, Rosie's just put up a question about the box of pans. How about if you spray them first? Yes, of course, Rosie, you can spray them first. I still don't find that I get as much colour off them as the system that I use, but you may do. You may absolutely do. It's just whatever works for you. So as they come out the tubes, like I said, I find them a bit too sticky. The other thing that drives me nuts about tubes is the lids on them. Now, whilst you'll see in a minute that the statement that I make about my system of colouring may seem to the contrary about what I'm about to say, I cannot be trying to wrestle with the tiny little lids. Admittedly, the larger size tubes are better, but these lids drive me crackers. I'm so busy trying to get the lid off, and then you don't screw it on properly, and then you get colour that squishes out from underneath it, and it just drives me a little bit bats. So that's another reason why I can't be struggling with the tubes. It just takes my concentration away from the job of painting. Also, I used to be that tutor that said, buy yourself a really big box and squeeze out the colours in a particular order all the way around your plastic box, and then you can just squeeze the colours out and you're not washing any down the sink. I see too many people in classes bring an old plate or a very clean palette and then they squeeze a bit of colour out and then they want to clean their palette at the end of the day and they're just chucking all their money down the sink. And so I used to say to people, right, okay, so maybe buy a box with, I don't know, 20 holes all the way around it. Get your 20 colours, squeeze them out all the way around your box, and then every time you use it, you know where your colours are and you're not wasting any, which is all fine and dandy until you get paint number 21. And then it ends up kind of in the corner of your palette, or you have to buy another box, and then you've got one box for this and one box for that and one box for the other. And again, that drives me a little bit nuts. So I use a different system. Yes, Pam, you're not the only one that struggles to get the lid off of tubes. You know. Yes, and waste not, want not. Yes, exactly. These are all things, yeah. Jo is saying that her OCD kicks in and then spends ages cleaning them and putting them back on. Yes, I'm with you, Jo. Absolutely with you. So this is the system that I use. I buy empty whole pans. You can get it in half pan as well. You can get them in smaller ones. But if you've ever watched any of my demonstrations, I kind of use more colour than less colour. So I use a whole pan like this, and I buy it empty. You can buy them from the SAA. They have lots of them, great big bags of them if you want. Janet is saying, sometimes I find just oil coming out of the tubes. What do you do to avoid this? Janet, that is the gum arabic that has separated from the pigment in transit. It does happen on a few colours, sometimes happens on cerulean. It does sometimes yellow ochre. I had it happen to me yesterday. If what you can do is you can either squeeze it out onto a tissue just to get rid of it, or if you squeeze it out onto your palette, wait until the paint comes around and then use the handle of your brush to mix it back together like that, and you'll find it reconstitutes. It isn't oil, actually, it's the gum arabic. It's the binder that has separated the pigment, okay? So this is what I do. As you can see, this one is getting to the end of the road, so I can squeeze a little bit more colour out. So I take my tubed colour of paint. This one is Jane's Grey. Look at that. I don't look after my tubes at all. Far too busy painting to do that. And then I take the colour and I squeeze it out into the pan like that. And then I will leave that somewhere warm to dry. I wouldn't recommend that you leave it in the sunshine. That doesn't do it the best. But if you've got a conservatory or something like that, then you can use that. Lots of information coming in. Lots of people saying they use contact lens cases. That's a brilliant idea. Lots of people saying that they struggle to get the lids off. Yes, a pair of pliers or one of those little jam jar openers, you know, those sort of plastic grips that you can put over the top. And Steph is saying, is there a way to get dried watercolour from the tubes? I have several like this. So what you need to do, Steph, is at the bottom of the tube you have something called a crimp. And it's basically the metal tube folded over. And so what you do is I won't do it to this one because it's a relatively new tube. You unfold that and then you can either cut or you can sometimes just split them by hand. Split the tube down, open it up, and then you can use it like a pan. But watercolours do sometimes go off. There are some colours that dry faster than others just by the nature of their pigment. So Steph, I hope that helps. Now Mick has written us a poem because it's Tuesday and Mick is amazing and very quick off the mark. Mick has put, to pan or not to pan, that is the question, whether it is better to use a tube or pan or suffer the slosh of water all over your surfaces. Nay, I say unto you, do as you please, as long as you don't frighten the horses. Mick, you're a genius. So there's my Jane's Grey. I have squeezed that out into my pan and then I will allow that to dry. And then what happens, I won't do it on that wet one, but I would spritz them very lightly before they start. And that reconstitutes them to a much greater, or to me a more sort of superior consistency than a half pan. And then what I do, as you've probably seen me do in the past, is that I roll my brush into my colour so that all the bristles get coated in colour. I'm not tapping away. like this at it. I roll my brush in the colour and then I apply it straight away, because I don't do an awful lot of mixing on a palette, okay? Why don't I do a lot of mixing on a palette? I don't do a lot of mixing on a palette because I think a palette is a procrastination tool. So bear with me on this one. See if this is something that you do. You've got, let's take a better example. You've got a grey and you've got a blue, and you want to mix those two colours together before doing the deed of applying them to the piece of paper. So tell me if you do this. You stick your brush in that paint and you put it on your palette, and then you put your brush in the water, already getting rid of half of the colour that you've just loaded up from here. You put it in the water and you swish it all off. And then you take this blue and you mix it together, and then you go, oh, that doesn't look quite right. I'm going to wash my brush off. So you've washed another load of paint down in your water pot. And then for some reason your brush goes back onto here and you mix it all together again, and you go, oh, that looks a bit pale now. So your brush goes into there and then it goes into the grey. And this, all of this time, you are procrastinating because you're mixing on your palette and you're not actually applying your colour to your piece of paper. And what happens then is, usually because your brush has gone in and out of the water so much, the colour that's on your palette is not the colour that you want it to be. It's quite kind of disappointing. When you go to put it on the piece of paper, it's too pale, or it's a bit muddy, or you've kind of smashed it around and the poor pigment is yelling, help me, because you've sat there for 10 minutes doing this, actually not applying it to your paper. Now, I'm saying all this not as a criticism of you guys out there. I'm saying this because that's what I used to do. I used to go paint to palette to water to palette to paint to palette to water to palette, not actually applying the colour to my paper at all, and getting rather dull, boring mixes. So what I do now is I work straight from my pans. So if I've got an area to paint, I will pick up one bit of colour, I'll pick up another bit of colour, and yes, colours go into other colours, it's fine, don't worry about it. And then it goes straight on my paper, and that way I'm not wasting it. It's a Goldilocks consistency, so it's not too dry and it's not, it's not too wet, it's just right. And I'm using nice, fresh, neat colour, so I get much kind of bolder statements on my piece of paper. And that's why I use the system that I do. So one more thing before, yes, Rosie, I'm going to get to that in just a second. So one of the things just to share with you, let's do it on something that I can see. I'm going to take you to close-up cam because, of course, you might have an awful lot of colours. And you might be thinking, well, that's great, Ali, but how on earth am I supposed to tell which colour is which? Now, a little Sharpie pen, one of these, will do the trick. Of course, it's purple. Will do the trick fine. A nice fine nib. You can write the name of it on the side, or even better still, write the name of it on the bottom. Yes, I know that when you put it into your box, you're not going to be able to see what that is. But usually what happens is that you choose your colours before you start painting, so you can always pull it out and check it's the colour that you want. You could, of course, make a chart. So I'll just show you the back of my my mum's old box. So here is her Daler-Rowney box. And on the back, she made a chart of the colours. You could paint it in as well. Anything that makes the process of painting easier. But this is the system that I use, and we're going to need a close-up camera to help us out with this. So let's get a close-up camera in for you, and then you can see what I am talking about. I am the sad sack that has a little label machine that prints out all the information that is required for understanding the paints and what they are and why they use them. So I've got the name here. So it's obviously Raw Sienna Light. You can see that. Yeah, look, I've got a bit of green in it. Never mind, moving on. I've got a little code for the brand, so DS, so that's Daniel Smith. And then I have extra information about it that might be helpful to you. So here I've got the pigment number. So that is PY42, because I can't remember what all the pigment numbers are. Got to be crazy. And then I've got an extra little bit of information about whether it stains or whether it's semi-transparent or whether it granulates or any of those kind of things. And yes, Ali D is right. It's a little Dymo printer. If you've got a label machine, or if you use sheets of labels in your printer, then this does the trick. Now, the only disadvantage of this system is when it's a colour that you use an awful lot. So, for example, there's my Jane's Grey that I've just squeezed out, and I don't know if you can see, it's kind of the label's fallen off a little bit. So sometimes I do have to go through my box printing out new labels. There's probably one here that there's my cobalt blue, which, okay, it looks better in the camera than it actually does in real life, but there you go. So cobalt blue, PB28, it's semi-transparent, it granulates, and it's Daniel Smith. Now, all of those things are useful bits of information for me. They might not be useful bits of information for you, but as you know, I'm a bit of it. Look, I'm covered in paint already, honestly. Jo's just very kindly said that she likes my nails, but look at it, covered in paint. 2 seconds into the demo and I'm already tattooed with it. As a tutor, it's really important for me to understand the difference between all of the paints. My camera is struggling to pick that up because the sun's just come out. And know the difference between all the different raw siennas and the like. So that's why that sort of thing is really important for me to understand, because I need to know the difference between one colour and the next colour when I am teaching. And Ali is saying, and I bet Ali has saved every single label type on her computer. Ali, you know me far too well. Now, what can you do to store these pans in? I've given you some ideas over on the blog post today, and I have encouraged you to share your solutions to how you store these pans. Yeah, not that I'm OCD at all, Ali, is it? Lots of people have come up with all sorts of ingenious ways of how to store them. People have used Tupperware and cigar boxes, and like you've said, contact lens boxes, pill boxes, all sorts of things going on. You can get tins made for the purpose. Now, this is a tin that I use for some of my illustration work. So these are going to be colours that you haven't necessarily seen me use before, because I do have a secondary part of what I do where I do illustration work, and it uses different colours entirely, and I end up mixing up my own paints and have my own kind of variations of colours. These will be colours that you don't necessarily recognise. And then, yes, I do have to mix on a palette because I'm working in areas this big, very different from my fine art work. And one day I will unleash my illustration work on the world. Maybe next year, maybe not this year. But this is a metal tin. These are readily available. I think I have a couple left on my website. They're proving to be quite hard to find at the moment, or they're at least proving quite hard to find at a reasonable price at the moment. And you can arrange your colours in any order. You can slot these in under the metal tabs, and you've also got the box there as well. If I remember correctly, it takes 48 half pans, but you can get smaller boxes than this, and you can get larger boxes than this too. So that's quite, Rosie, I hope that answers your question. That sort of takes care of how to store them. But do you know what? You'll come up with much more ingenious ideas than that necessarily. Have a look around your house, see what else you can find in your house that is going to help you solve this problem. But I thought you might be interested to see my box. Now, I'm not doing this to show off. Yes, Gwenda, a Ferrero Rocher box. This thing that I'm about to share with you now, I'm not doing because I'm going, haha, I've got a box and you haven't. It is simply because I thought you might be interested to see when I talk about colour and how I talk about colour, why I'm so passionate about colour. And this has to be one of my most treasured possessions. It's been a bit beaten about. because I use it pretty much every single day. This was a box that was built for me by my amazing husband, Bees. I know some of you out there know him very well. This was made for me from scratch. Excuse me. And before you ask, no, he's not going to make them. And he's not going to make them because this took him a ridiculous amount of time to build. And judging from the amount of swearing that came from his workshop, I doubt very much that he would want to build one again. So let's take you into the box, and I'll try to turn it so that it's camera friendly. What I've done with mine, because I have to, for my job, use so many different brands of paint, and I have to compare lots of different brands all the time, which is another reason why I label them. I have actually 3 trays of colour. So I've got my yellows, reds and into my pinks over here. I've got my purples, blues and a rogue one, and my turquoises in that tray. And then over here I've got my kind of mainstay greens, browns, russets, and then into the kind of the greys, blacks and some of the other oddities that I have. Now these aren't necessarily the colours that I use every single day, but as you know, I do have the great privilege of having a job where paint companies ask me to test things out, or I write for various publications comparing various colours, or we have discussions, don't we, about what's the difference between this brand of cobalt blue and this brand of cobalt blue and this brand of cobalt blue. And so I need to have 5 different kinds of cobalt blue or 2 different kinds of raw sienna, and that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. It's not that I'm a paint hoarder at all. Now, Bees constructed these, made them all from scratch. This wasn't a pre-bought thing. This was literally fashioned out because he's such a great carpenter. He made this, okay? This isn't something that he bought and then built the rest of the box around. This is literally bespoke. So if you have a carpenter in your life, set them a challenge. Now, one of the things that I also wanted him to do was to have an area where I have my water pot. So as some of you know, the water pot I use is a pop-up water pot, so that gets stashed in there too. This is a ceramic palette. You can see where I've used a bit of brusho or a bit of gouache where I actually do need to mix it in. And this is something that I call my working palette. So rather than when I'm teaching and demonstrating and all the like, rather than lugging these great big trays, I have a working palette where I put whatever colours it is that I happen to be using for a particular project in here, or there's some issue with it, or there's a problem, or it's empty and I need to work into it. And it's all kind of rubber lined so that it doesn't slip about. Bees is so clever. I know I'm massively biased, but Bees is so clever that he made it so each tray fits on top of the next one, so that when I pick the box up, the pans don't fall out. I mean, I do horrible things to this, like I forget to put the catches on, and then I sometimes pick up the box and all the colours fall out. Some of you who follow me on social media have seen it when I've done that in the back of my car and all those things when I'm in a hurry. And then the lid goes on it, and if I just spin it around, I can lock it up, and it's got a handle, and then I carry it around like some sort of deed box. So it is absolutely my pride and joy, and is probably worth quite a bit of money. So feel free to hold it for ransom if ever you get anywhere near it. And huge thanks to my husband for doing that, because that isn't a job to undertake lightly. That was hours of work. It was my Christmas present one year. But I cherish it. I'm going to get him to upgrade it soon. Not that he knows this, and he's not in the house today. But I'm going to get him to put metal corners on it and to upgrade it a little bit. It's also painted black, and I am seriously considering painting it purple. But anywho, that gives you a bit of an idea of the box that I carry around the country. But the principle is still the same. You've got these pans of colour. So these are the things that I've been working with recently. These are the colours that I've been thinking about. If you've been on one of my workshops recently, you probably recognise the colour palette. So we did a poppy workshop last week, for which we had different reds and greys and yellows and things. And there are some colours, obviously, that I have out all the time, although Moon Glow isn't here today. Where's my Moon Glow, I wonder? But Cobalt Violet is there, Jane's Grey, Cobalt Blue, Cobalt Turquoise, Green Apatite Genuine, Quinacridone Gold. You can see from a lot of my paintings, those are the colours that I use on a regular basis. And Fran is saying, wow, Bees loves you so much. Yeah, Fran, I don't think he loved me after he'd made it, but that's another story for another day. So I hope that helps. I'm really not doing this to kind of show off as look how many paints I've got. I'm doing it to help you to understand why I use the colours that I do, the way that I use my colours, and how I've come about this decision. Because my job is pretty unique, and I need a unique paint box to go with it. If you have any questions about that, do stick them into the chat. Don't disappear yet. I know that you go, oh, she's finished talking, and you disappear off to do much more important things, but I have lots of information for you. If you have any questions about that, stick them into the chat. Or go over to the blog, because as you know, I archive this broadcast over on my blog, and there's a little bit more information always over there too. Things that I don't necessarily either get the time to talk about, or it's not particularly relevant to what it is that we're talking about today. But I do need to look at my little prompt list, because I have a lot of information to share with you. Now, I hope you will forgive me, but there's not going to be a Technique Tuesday next week. It's only 1 week holiday for me. It's just simply because I have such a bonkers weekend coming up with teaching all over the place, all of which I will share with you in just a second. But I'm going to take next Tuesday morning off. I hope you don't mind. However, on the 11th of May, which is when the next Technique Tuesday will be broadcast, I have so much to share with you, because that is the day that I really ramp up the event for Dorset Art Weeks. Now, just in case you didn't know about Dorset Art Weeks is normally where we throw open the doors of the studio, we invite people in, and they get to see my latest collection of work. We have greetings cards and prints and collaborative work and lots of other things for sale. But this time, because we're not sure about how many people we're going to have through the door, we are going to open it up virtually too. So the entire exhibition will be online, which sounds like a very passive thing that you think, oh, well, I'm just going to scroll through some paintings. But let me share some stuff with you. Now, this is a bit tricky because I've not used this technology before. So bear with me. If one of the things that I want to share with you is where you can find out the information about Dorset Art Week. So let's see if we can make my website go live in this broadcast. So here we go. If you access my website on a desktop, this is probably what it looks like. If you access it on a device, you probably just see these tabs. And there you go. There is Dorset Art Weeks. So if you click onto that tab, it will take you through to the Dorset Art Weeks page. Now, not all of this is live yet, because you got to wait until the 22nd of May. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, down there it says events during Dorset Art Weeks. That's what we call it, DOR. And if you click on that, you will see all the events that I have coming up that you can take part in. So every day, although it says May the 13th there will actually be a broadcast on May the 11th as well as part of Technique Tuesday. You can see all the things that I'm going to be talking about, all the ways around the event. Now, this might be useful to you because you might be thinking of taking part in an event similar to this one. It might be that you are interested in the behind the scenes type of things about what goes on. It might be things like you considered making your paintings into greetings cards and prints, but you don't know how to go about it. And it will also be things like, if we go a bit further in, so it will be me highlighting various paintings, and then in Technique Tuesday I will be sharing how I painted that kind of thing. So there's lots for you to take part in, and it's going to happen every single day in the week running up to Dorset Art Weeks and the 2 weeks of it. Now, if you're local to me, obviously you can pop in. You can actually see where I broadcast from. You can see my paintings. You can even purchase. But no matter where you are in the world, it means that I get to show you my latest collection. I get to share my work with you. It's a big event for me. Now, Technique Tuesday will actually continue, but it's going to have a slight makeover. So it's going to be called Technique Tuesday Takeover. And that's because it's not going to happen on my Facebook page. It's going to happen elsewhere. But you know what? I'm going to let you find those things out for yourself and join me for the ride. It's going to be at a slightly different time during Dorset Art Weeks because I have to open the doors at 10 a.m. I'm pointing over there because that's where the door is. It's because I have to open my doors at 10 o'clock. So there will be some slight time changes, but all of this information is available on the website. Now, what else do I need to share with you? I've got a workshop tomorrow. Some of you watching live might be on my Corfe Castle workshop tomorrow. If you'd like to join me for a workshop, my classes went live yesterday. They're all available on the website. There's a clickable link in the blog if you would like to join me for one of those. Now, if you're around on Saturday the 1st of May, just in case you're watching this on Catch Up 2021, I am going to be over on the Search Press page. My lovely publishers, Search Press, are allowing me to take part in their virtual spring festival. That is going to happen on their Facebook page. There's a link on the blog so that you can click straight to it. I'm the first person up in the event, not scary at all, where I will be sharing a demonstration of a seahorse. Going to do a whole painting from start to finish. You can tune in. That is absolutely free. If you've got access to Facebook, then you can join in. And do feel free to comment. It will run exactly like this does. I will see your comments coming in and I will try to interact with you as much as possible while I am painting. I'm also off to Wales this weekend to do a 2-day workshop from my lovely friends over at Chapel Cottage Studio. So that's kind of why, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little bit of a break from Technique Tuesday next week. So lots of things going on. I can see lots of you have commented about various things that are going on. Now, keep chatting to each other. That is more important than ever at the moment. Keep sharing things. Don't forget the Learning to Paint page over on Facebook. If you come up with a solution for housing your pans, your half pans or your whole pans, and you think, actually, this is brilliant and I need to share it with everybody, then take a photograph of it, post it over on the Learning to Paint page, because people are going to be really interested to see what solutions you come up with. So I'm not going to necessarily see you for a couple of weeks, but I'll be back on the 11th of May with vengeance. Dorset Art Weeks all the way, getting very excited for that. We've put so much work into the exhibition, not just myself, but Bees as well, because he's been doing all my picture framing. 92 paintings are going to be in that collection, and he has framed, mounted, frou-froued every single one of them. So he needs as much credit as I do for making that event go ahead. Until I see you in a couple of weeks, unless I see you on a course or through the Search Press demo or anything else that I've got coming up, please take lots and lots of care of yourselves. Continue to chat, continue to share, keep painting, and I will see you very soon. Take care, lovely people. Bye.